First guest of the morning is, I think, a guy that you know well, William Russell. He is a former part of the Trump campaign, an advisor, state director in Mississippi, a partner at Ballard Partners in Washington, D.C. Joins us, cowbell over his left shoulder this morning.
You know it, baby. You know
What's
it.
up, Willie?
You know, it's a kind of a bleak day and a rainy day here in Washington, D.C., but it's always a good day to be a Mississippian. It's always a good day to talk to you, Richard. Thanks for having me on again.
I appreciate that. Always appreciate your time. I think I asked you last time we visited, but I don't remember exactly how you answered it, so I'll visit there again. It kind of topical with where we were before this started. Does Washington, D.C. feel safer to be out and about on the streets, going to a restaurant? Does it feel safer now than it did a month ago?
I think so. I certainly kind of feel that. It's the visual deterrence that the National Guard and a more robust police force offers. You just don't, even if it may be just a figment of my imagination, I certainly feel safer just by having guys walking around that are paying attention, that are just eyes peeled. I think that's a very good thing to have. And I think that, I personally, I actually live in Virginia. I don't even live in D.C. I work in D.C., so I drive in every day.
Right.
So it's the walking around during the day that I feel comfortable when you go out for a dinner or something like that. Yeah, it's. I'm encouraged to know that at least it would seem like there's some semblance of normalcy returning to D.C. Now, I mean, we've talked about this in the past. There's a real problem with the DC police. There's a real problem in how they report the crimes or underreport or misreport. That's all under investigation right now by the DOJ anyway. So I think that there is multiple factors that are playing into what's going on and the reality of the situation in DC versus where we are today with the National Guard still here. At any rate, I think that's working. And I think we're going to see that work at a couple of other great states around the country.
Well, and before you came on, I was talking about cities. And we have great cities in the United States, or at least used to, and they're just not great places like many of them once were under their Democrat leadership for years, if not decades. A lot of people have pushed back as we've talked about this, about the idea of uniformed military personnel on the streets, and that's not a look that we want in the United States. And I think most people agree with that. It's like, no, we don't want that, but we're willing to sacrifice for a little while to try and get this problem under control. Is it a temporary solution, though, where we just go back to how it was, or does this create progress that is sustainable moving forward?
So I think it's multifaceted, right? If you're just coming in with the National Guard and putting a Band-Aid on an issue by trying to create that visual deterrence for criminal activity, yeah, it's great for the amount of time that the National Guard is going to be on the street corner watching out for the people. But to your point, that is not a long-term solution. And we shouldn't be acting as if that's going to be our stopgap every single time we see something, crime get out of control somewhere. This needs to be a hand-in-hand partnership with not only trying to get the crime that is actively happening down, which is what the National Guard effectively doing right now by being the visual deterrent, but this also needs to be an administrative reform inside each police force. I know in our home state, we've got these kind of reforms that need to happen, whether it be with Jackson Police Department, where I come from, where I'm born and raised in Columbus, Mississippi. Columbus Police Department needed reform several years ago and still needs it now. Like, we need to be reforming our police officers. We need to be making sure that the leadership for our police departments are capable and prepared to do the job, and that any sort of impropriety like what we're seeing in DC with this misrepresentation of the actual crime that's happening on the ground is that's dealt with swiftly and efficiently and removed as that's not what the way that we do business.
Yeah.
And I hope that they're doing that right now.
I would give Muriel Bowser, the mayor in D.C., some level of credit, even though she kind of pushed back against the idea on the front end. She maybe with some reticence agreed that it had worked, right? That crime numbers were down, and she was thankful for the partnership with the National Guard. And that's not what is happening in Chicago. You got Johnson, this mayor, who's like pushing back like crazy. You've got J.B. Pritzker saying last night that this is something that you better get used to, and it's the first step toward voter suppression in the midterms, which is incredibly rich because it's kind of like gaslighting 101 from Democrats in terms of we're going to say out loud and accuse you of the things that we actually do. And I wonder if people are smart enough, finally, ever, to see it, to recognize it.
I don't know, but I will say, this last time we came on, we talked about how we've kind of seen Republicans writ large through Charlie Kirk's death step up and call out the problems that they're seeing very publicly. That's, that normally we do that in our own circles, but we do it, tactfully, and we're not very loud about it because we're trying to be, kind of, or they're just, we don't have a spine and we're not willing to be public about it.
My hope,
correct. And my thought in this culture shift that we seem to be having in the United States of a willingness, more willing to step up, call out the problem for what it is. I'm hoping that the conservatives, the Republicans, actually, partisan politics aside, people who want to be safe in their community, I'm hoping that those people step up and start having the conversation with their local officials in Chicago and in Illinois writ large. I'm hopeful that people who just want the sense of normalcy and just want to have crime under control and want to have their kids play outside till the streetlights come on. Like, I think that there are more people in this country that want that, and they don't really care how we get there. They just want to get back to that. And I'm hoping that they're the ones who step up and engage directly with the mayor, engage directly with their congressman or their senator or their governor and say, I appreciate what you're talking about. Of course, we don't want to militarize state, but something's got to change because the way we're doing it right now ain't working.
I have friends that see the world differently than I do politically, but I think they want their kids to be safe at night.
It's a pretty simple thing. Like, I'm there. I don't agree with everybody, but we're able to come together on our kids, on agreeing that we want good education, on agreeing that we want safe schools, we want safe neighborhoods. We don't want our kids getting abducted. We don't want our kids joining gangs. This is
we
kind
all
of
like hanging out, watching football, and eating food that comes off the grill.
Exactly.
Like there are things that are in common there, and it's like the Looney Tune spectrums of the parties. And I've said a bunch of times, William, and I haven't really gotten a whole lot of pushback about the only thing crazier than a far left nut job is a right wing nut job, because they're out there too.
Sure, absolutely.
And kind of to pull it back closer to home. I mean, you said in Chicago in particular, and I mean in Memphis, in Jackson, in New Orleans, where we're talking about safety. Like you want to go play in a tennis match that finishes at dusk and feel like you can get to your car safely without being robbed or carjacked or assaulted. Like, that's fairly basic. All right. William Russell, partner at Ballard Partners. Always enjoy visiting in Washington, D.C. We're going to get him to hang on for just a few more minutes. We're going to talk about Supreme Court being back in session and some of the other things that are happening in Congress as we are into week 2 of the federal government shutdown. It's Mornings with Richard Cross, SuperTalk Mississippi. Quick time out. We got more with you coming up right after this. It's all good. William Russell is my guest. He is a partner with Ballard Partners, headquartered in Washington, D.C., worked with the Trump campaign as an advisor, state director here in Mississippi in bygone years. And
That's right.
Feels like they're moving fast.
Man
Supreme
alive.
Court back in Supreme Court back in session. They got a little bit of a holiday, and they got a docket full that feels like it is getting more full by the day. And the thing is, traditionally, the Supreme Court has moved at a pretty glacial pace, and now it is if they are being asked to move at light speed. Can this continue at the Supreme Court level?
I think it's going to have to continue. This is just kind of the way that our government writ large is moving, whether it be through executive fiat, which is a lot of what we're seeing right now, whether it's through the states trying to counteract whatever the federal government is doing. This is naturally where we're going to head. Now, obviously, the Supreme Court has the ability to do whatever it is that they want to do. They can slow things down artificially if they want to. It's up to them. But I want to take a step back and think about how we are where we are with this Supreme Court, with the judges that we have on the bench now. I mean, not a day goes by when we're being challenged. Conservatives are being challenged. The administration is being challenged with the moves that they're making at the Supreme Court level. And I can't help but remember how many Supreme Court justices Donald Trump got the first time around, how pivotal that's going to play. I
don't think that's talked about enough. I think
it's not.
I think it is the biggest achievement that Donald Trump had as president in term one.
And you know what's funny? This was back when I affectionately refer to this as the wandering in the wilderness years, when I was continuing to work for the president down in Mar-a-Lago post-presidency. And we had two separate rulings, the Roe ruling, and we had affirmative action ruling. And I walked into his office when these were happening both times, and I said, I want you just to take a second and think about how you're not even in that White House anymore. You're here standing in front of me. We're hanging out in Mar-a-Lago, and you are still making America great again. This is your legacy that we're talking about here. It is going to live on
You
much
said that
longer.
directly to Donald Trump?
Of course I did, because it's true. This is his legacy. He is still, he's not even in power, and he's still making America great again. And that's what a wonderful thing to be able to have that opportunity in his first term, and then be able to come back and finish the job that he started. And in the interim,
No. Finish that thought. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you there, but I want an offshoot of this.
Sure. And in the interim, in between the years that he's serving president, he had a court that was stopping a lot of the aggressive posturing that the Biden administration was doing, or these states were doing. And it's because of his decisions, his opportunities to put those justices on the Supreme Court. It's an amazing thing. And it's going to go down as one of the best things that he ever did in either term. Let's hear it.
Well, I think you and I maybe have gone down this road before. There are conservatives, Republicans, right-wingers who get frustrated with the Supreme Court because not every single decision goes exactly the way they want it to. Obviously, that's the case with Democrats, is more decisions than not seem to not be going the way they want it to go. I would argue that is a sign of a healthy Supreme Court. Neither side should have every single judgment go its way. And when you look at the makeup, you'll hear people talk about John Roberts, and he's really been disappointing, and this was supposed to be this conservative, and John Roberts has been there a long time now.
Listen, John Roberts was wrong, though, on the fact that the ACA wasn't a tax. It was a tax. It is a tax. That was very wrong on his part. Generally, he's been pretty good, but to your point, like this is the Supreme Court. You said a judge. That word judgment. A judge is in the word. It's their judgment on how they interpret the law, and I would say that if conservatives were the ones who are moaning, complaining about the rulings of some of the conservative justices, we don't want our conservative justices ruling from the bench and not through the law just as much as we don't want the liberal side doing exactly that. So let's make better law, and if that law is challenged and put in front of the Supreme Court, it stands on its own merits instead of having activist judges from the right side ruling from the bench. That's the whole design of our government.
So let's spin this forward. We are 13 months from midterms. As consequential a set of midterms as we have ever seen. Right now, Republicans have a majority, but it is a thin majority. House, Senate obviously have the White House. This particular term for Donald Trump has been ruled by executive order, and Congress has gotten a little bit done. Is there a scenario where Republicans pick up enough seats in the midterms that Congress can actually debate legislation, enact law, and some of Trump's policies can be enacted through Congress as opposed to just through the stroke of a pen?
Well, your listeners should be paying attention to Louisiana versus Calais and how the Supreme Court's going to rule on that. That case has major implications for the Voting Rights Act and the racial gerrymandering that has been done. It's yet to be seen how they're going to rule, but if they strike down one of the provisions in the Voting Rights Act, it allows for a more equally drawn districts instead of all this gerrymandering. I mean, take a look at, we were just talking about Illinois. Your listeners are going to pull up a congressional map of Illinois and look how those districts are drawn. It is the most ridiculous thing that you have ever seen. It's gerrymandering to the max, right? Democrats complain about Republicans gerrymandering all the time, but take a look at yourselves. Look in the mirror. Part of that is along racial lines. I would argue that the Voting Rights Act was made to not allow the gerrymandering that's usually done in these Democrat states that find ways to make sure that a congressional district is skewed heavily toward one racial demographic over another in order to ensure that Democrats stay in power. So I would like to see this struck down. Now, that's going to afford a lot of the big red states to kind of do a redistricting rather quickly. We're going to see all kinds of redistricting. I think Florida is one of the ones right now that they're considering redistricting, pending whatever the decision the Supreme Court makes. So I believe, and there's some math out there that puts it all the way up to 22 seats that this affects. I don't think it's that high. It's probably around 15 seats in total in summation in the House. That if this specific case is overturned and struck down, or this Section 2 is struck down, it's going to affect about that many seats. But it's going to afford the states, the legislatures, an opportunity to shore up some red seats, to make some seats that are normally not in play. Maybe not a toss-up, but within striking distance, which it's all I would be asking for at this point. Give us a chance to grow the majority a little bit. But we're not talking about a lot here. But my hope is that when we win back the House and we maintain, well, we've already to win in the House and hopefully grow the majority. Same goes for the Senate. That in this last 2 years of this final Trump administration, we have a House and a Senate that are willing to step up and say, we're going to go all the way this time. Like, enough talk. We now have 2 years to finish the job, and irrespective of who comes next.
I'll just throw this at you, knowing that we don't have time to actually talk about it, and we can pick this up down the line. Are Republicans in the primary in 3 years going to kind of fall in line, or is there going to be this infighting that becomes destructive? And I guess when I say fall in line, I mean, do they lay the groundwork for J.D. Vance with Marco Rubio as the vice president? And then everybody's okay with that?
I don't know. We've got 3 years and a quarter to figure that out, Richard. So we'll keep that conversation going.
Yeah, I know. We got a long way to go, but it's one of those that it's just worth kind of peeking around the corner and down the hallway at, because it's going to be interesting.
That's 3 years is a lifetime in politics. Thank you, Richard.
It certainly is. William Russell, partner with Ballard Partners in Washington, D.C., former advisor for Trump and chair of the Trump campaign in Mississippi. We're back with you after this.